There is this tribe in New Guinea that practices polygamy, and when the husband of 3 wives was asked how many wives he wished he had, everyone was expecting him to say maybe 6 or 7, but he paused, thought, and said, actually, none. Now, I really cannot relate to this man, and that's not because I want to have multiple wives, but because I just want a lot more of the things that I enjoy in life, the main thing being knowledge and books. A quick Google search showed me that there are currently 130 million books in the world, so therefore it's no wonder that I constantly feel like I'm missing out on so much of them. I constantly crave new books. I want to learn more, read more, feel more, experience more all the time, and this almost anxious curiosity leads me to live my life at a rate that other people around me find usually annoyingly dizzying. And so I challenged myself to be a bit more like this man, and for the first time in my life, to just calm down. I usually tend to read about 3 new books every single week, but for the last 6 months, I've been forcing myself to not read a single new book, but to only reread old books if I felt like it. And honestly, it's completely changed my life. So, at the end of this experiment, here is how a recovering new knowledge addict now thinks that actually rereading books might be much more valuable than reading new ones, and also how this has potentially completely changed my behaviour from now on. Let's get straight into it. Now, the first thing I want to get out of the way is that even though I'm technically rereading a book, the thing that I've realised is that I can never actually read the same book twice, because every time I'm reading it, it is completely different, because I am completely different. I feel as though the book is reading me just as much as I am reading it. Now, Proust also said this when he said that, in reality, every reader, while he is reading, is the reader of his own self. And this is because every time I'm approaching a book, I'm approaching it with my background, with my history, with my feelings, with my emotions, with my traumas, with my joys, with my pains, with my perspective at the moment, which is consistently shifting. And this is really, really interesting because every time that I am different, the book that I'm reading is also different. And in a philosophical sense, I truly believe that no 2 people have actually read the same book ever. And what is a book really, and what the author meant and what I got was so different, because every time that I read something, what I'm reading is different too. Proust also said that one cannot read a novel without ascribing to the heroine the traits of the one that we love. And because often the one that I love changes, also the heroine changes, so the whole story in a way changes. This is so essential to what I'm taking from books in general. Beyond the simple fact that yes, I'm kind of reading a different book every single time, what this really means to me is that books become a checkpoint to my growth and who I am as a person. Because, for example, every time that I read something, I'm not only laying down the memories of what I'm reading in the book, I'm also capturing who I am as a person. I'm capturing my perspectives, I'm capturing how the book is making me feel, I'm capturing how I'm interpreting things in the book. And if I reapproach it a few months, weeks, or years later, I can remember not only what I read at the time, but also who I was at the time and how I was thinking. And so every time that I'm reading a book, when it's the same book, it's almost as though I'm leaving an anchor or a checkpoint in my life that will just be frozen there in time. And the next time I reread that book, I can vividly remember who I used to be the last time I touched it. And this is so interesting to me. I found that reapproaching books that I've read years later highlighted the changes between me as a person back then and who I am right now. And it's almost there was a point A and now there is a point B, and I can see all the difference in between, and it's so crazy. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi said that we should always keep exploring what it's like to be different to who we are. And I feel as though with rereading books, I've done this much more intentionally, because not only have I passively changed, but now I've realized that change and I've seen the trajectory and the direction of my growth, which means I can either reevaluate and go in a different direction, or I can be happy or curious about where I've come and how I've changed in my life. The second thing I found by rereading books is that I've turned from a what reader into a why reader. I feel like the first time I'm approaching something, I'm much more focused on the information itself or on the narrative and the story, and a huge part of my conscious and a huge part of my brain is focused on what's actually happening and where it's going to go, and kind of making these constant assumptions about what's happening or what will happen, and then those being either affirmed or turned down. And so a huge part of my attention is focused on the information itself, and very little of it does this more why work of why is this happening and what's going on. But I feel as though the second time I'm reapproaching a book, because I already know what the story is, I'm much more free to do very exciting things with my conscious mind. I thought a lot about how to describe this, and the best way that I can come up with is that when I'm reading a book for the first time, I'm focusing on the words. So my consciousness is on the paper, it's there with what is happening. But when I'm rereading a book, especially for the 3rd, 4th, or 5th time, what happens is that I'm neither in my mind and I'm neither in the book, but I'm somewhere in between where I can somehow read between the lines. I can somehow kind of transcend beyond the actual story and the actual narrative and the actual information into this state of being able to question what is happening. For example, the characters are no longer people who do things, but they are people to whom things are done. When I'm rereading a fictional book, for example, I like to focus a lot more on what is happening with these characters. I can really point out all the points of foreshadowing, for example, because you can only see foreshadowing in retrospective, because I know what happens to them in the future, and as I'm seeing all the things that are influencing them in the moment, I'm coming up for rules for human behavior where I can see, oh, this is what influences him later, this is what makes him do that thing. All the little details here and there really build a very vivid and stronger picture that I would never be able to do on a first pass of a book. This in-depth understanding of characters is so valuable. Again, Csikszentmihalyi said, when a writer explains the failures of his characters, in a way, he forgives himself too. And this deep cathartic understanding of human behavior and of people that I can get when I'm transcending the level of the story is just so cathartic and so valuable and beautiful. Furthermore, this transcendence of the narrative into the deeper meaning of the book means that I am somehow passing the level of just the words into the things that the writer is not saying and the things that are happening perhaps in the background that are just not explicit. Eckhart Tolle said that words turn reality into something that the human mind can grasp, which isn't much. And this is quite funny because everything in books comes from words itself. But I feel as though when I'm rereading, because I'm adding so much from my perspective, because I'm adding things from the past of the book and the future of a book that I've read in previous readings, everything comes together in a much more powerful experience than I can get just focused on the words one at a time as I'm going through them in a first pass. Also, because I've read the book already and I have a lot less anxiety, and especially in these 6 months, I've gone, well, you know, I can read this as many times as I want. So it kind of quietened my mind and helped me use one perspective at a time when I'm reading a book. Sometimes I will focus just on the narrative of a secondary character, or sometimes I'll focus just on this little bit of information that was said in a corner of a story or in a corner of a chapter. And this perspective, this singular perspective, one at a time, was so liberating and so much more powerful. I love the quote by Brian Christian, which I'm kind of shoehorning here, but it says that a man with one watch knows what time it is, and a man with two never knows. And I feel as though when I'm reading a book, I'm using multiple watches, so multiple perspectives from all the characters, from all the complexity, from all the things that I'm bringing to it. But when I am reading a book again and again, I can calm down and just use one watch and one perspective and just see things in a singular way that I want to, and get so much from it in that way. Although my natural state of mind tends to be quite scattered and having multiple thoughts and perspectives at the same time, it's been quite entertaining and an interesting break to just commit to one perspective for a while in a book. That's honestly been very different and new for me, so I've really enjoyed it. Now, this change of perspective leads me very nicely onto my third point, which is how my note-taking has changed, because I still take notes from a book no matter how many times I've read it, but they tend to be so different. I feel like when I take notes from a book on the very first read, they tend to be the sexy phrases, the quotes that I will use in these videos, for example, and the things that are just like blatantly obvious that everyone is interested in and that I'm interested in too. But I feel as though once this is done on a first or second pass, then I'm left with some really high level understanding. And honestly, this has been crazy. I've accessed levels of note-taking by rereading books that I never even knew were possible before. For example, in one book in particular, Time Enough for Love, which is my favorite book of all time, there was this chapter which describes someone's life story. And when I was taking notes on it, what I did was I broke down this character's life journey into specific points, where then I created a formula for his way of living life, if that makes sense, which was so bizarre. I'd never reached this level before, so I feel as though I've unlocked this ultimate level of note-taking where I see the actual frameworks or the patterns in the behavior of the characters in fictional books, for example, or see the bigger picture, bigger frameworks in non-fiction books. It's just been crazy. So honestly, next level note-taking can be achieved, I think, by rereading things again and again. The fourth way that rereading books has kind of changed me is in the dopamine comfort versus stimulation. And what I mean by this is that I think, like all people, I'm quite a dopamine driven person, and dopamine is a hormone which kind of gives you pleasure when you are anticipating a reward. And I think this is closely tied into why I love new books, because there's this part of my mind that goes, oh, is this going to be interesting? Is this going to be new? And this is going to be the potential reward that I get every time that I read a book. And I feel as though this high level of dopamine really drives me to power through really fast new information, new books, anything that is recommended. And this is the kind of reward that I always associated with reading, which I think is not the full picture, because I kind of remembered when I was a lot younger, for example, I used to love reading a lot, but I used to be a prolific reader is an understatement, but I used to read a lot and very fast, to a level that my parents could obviously not keep up with. So very often I had to reread books almost all the time. I had like about 400, 500 books, and those were the books that I would go through on rotation. I wasn't able to just buy new ones all the time. And as I became an adult, then I just had like more disposable income and the internet. And so I can buy books really fast and really easily and go through them as and when I want, which has kind of led me to almost never reread things because I can get the dopamine hit with novelty. But I think I realized that there is a dopamine hit with comfort too. What I mean by this is that when I'm reading a book, and especially a fictional story or a philosophy book, what happens is that I am creating a world in my mind. And this can either be like a physical world that exists, for example, a Harry Potter world. I'll use that because I've reread Harry Potter multiple times as a child. And I have this whole universe in my mind that I can escape to. There's this space which has rules and characters and connections and laws. And I always know that no matter how bad the real world gets, I have this opportunity and chance to escape there in my mind because it's all set up for me. It's very, very easy for me to just go there. And this is dopamine, I think, from comfort, because I know that I will get a reward in this place that exists already in my mind. And the same way with philosophy, for example, when there's a philosophy book that really resonates with me, it provides this framework for viewing the world that I know I can access every time that I read this book. So every time I read this book, I can put these lenses on and see the world in this way that the philosopher described. And that's also my comfort dopamine. So I've gone, actually, I should probably be doing this more, and I should not just let this be, Harry Potter and a few philosophers, but I should let this be more books. And every time that I kind of get in touch with a book that I love, and I'll go, no, I want to create a world that I know I'm going to get a guaranteed kind of comfort dopamine hit every time that I get this. So I don't know if this makes sense, but it made sense in my mind. And my very last point, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I think I've become a bit of a book snob by doing this, because honestly, throughout these 6 months, I've had basically thousands of books from which I could pick to reread that I've read already, and not once have I gone, oh, I want to reread this pop psychology productivity book. Never. It's always been really good works of literature or really good philosophy books or something that's just like a lot of dense information. And I've kind of wondered why the hell I read so many shitty books, because I feel quite torn with this, because I get recommended a lot of productivity books and a lot of like pop books. I don't know how to describe them, like how to work faster or how to learn more or how to, I don't know, these like modern businessy type books, and I get recommended them a lot. I read them, they're okay, but they're just so superficial, and I think I've been wasting a lot of my reading time reading these, and I don't know where I stand at the moment. A part of me goes, just like screw all that and go back to the original text and read really, really good works of literature or really, really good like dense academic work, rather than reading these like over-processed, really flimsy books. But then another part of me goes, well, I mean, I guess I get some information from them, and it's good to be kind of in touch with what everyone around me is going through. So I don't know, I feel a bit both ways, but I've definitely become a lot stricter now with realizing that there's definitely a type of book that I would never touch twice, and that has been the majority of books that I've been reading for the last few years, and that doesn't make me feel too good. So yep, I'm a bit torn on this one. I would love to hear your thoughts. From all the books that I've been rereading, two that I would definitely recommend are Time Enough for Love. I kind of want to do a full video on this because it's my favorite book of all time, and also A New Earth or An Untethered Soul. And short form is a great place, not sponsored, short form is a great space to kind of get a summary of these books and see if they resonate with you, if you want to adapt this framework, and then to kind of invest in actually reading the full thing, which is obviously much more worth it than anything else. Now, re-establishing my core knowledge and reasoning as an adult is something which I feel very, very strongly for, and I don't only use books, but I also love to use practical exercises for. For this, I love to use Brilliant, which are very kindly sponsoring this video. Now, I am low-key obsessed with the little dopamine hits that I get from the logical questions on Brilliant, which kind of, I think at least, help me process through books a lot more quickly and efficiently. And if you are an adult or just a STEM student and you would love to brush up on these exercises with me, there will be a link in my description which will give you a free trial or a discount depending on what you want to do with it. So yeah, thank you so much if you made it so far. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Be kind to yourself and others, and don't believe everything you think. Thanks. Bye.